Records it. Peace, 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 peace and blessings, kings, queens, and everybody in the audience. Today, on the Freeway to Elevation, we have the Honorable Dr. Matt Wooten in the building to talk to us about his path and progression in the medical field. Dr. Wooten, first of all, before we get started with anything, I would love to ask you to start us off from a place of gratitude and one thing that you're grateful for today, sir.
Man, well, my birthday's tomorrow. So, I mean, this is perfect timing, man. I'm grateful for another year, man. Grateful for all the blessings the Lord has continued to bestow upon me, man. I mean, had some challenges, but, nothing that, I can't overcome and none that the good Lord, can't help me strive above. So, man, I'm, just happy for another year, man, So it's perfect question, perfect timing, man. Brother Kelly, man, I'm glad to be on here, man. This is actually the first podcast I've ever done, actually.
Oh,
so,
wow.
Man, I'm definitely honored, man, to speak to you, to your people and your viewers, man. And yeah, let's get it, man.
Well, before we move even any further, like the fact that you have graced us on your birthday week speaks volumes to who you are and what you bring to the table. See, they may not know, but I know already what type of person you are. So I'm just really honored that, again, you took the time to share with us, because the goal in this conversation is twofold. On one instance is to provide hope.
Right.
And on the other instance, it is to show our young, all children, but in particular, Black and brown children, that although we represent 13% of the population, only 5% of us get to make it to wear that white coat you have. And that number hasn't changed in 120 years. So,
yeah. Well, I'm gonna tell you what, man. Like I said, I love. Well, first of all, I will say that, man, look, it's nothing for me to come on and ring my birthday. All right. Like, look, I mean, because, this is Lord's work right here. He blessed, man. So that, like I said, man, and, we've had many conversations. I mean, I know the person you are, man, and just the heart that you have. And so that's what I'm saying. People with like minds, but, come together, but people with like hearts come together. And indeed. So, I mean, hey, man, so this is nothing for me to be here this week, man. Like I said, man, I enjoy doing things like this, man, in terms of, the percentage of, Black people we have in America and the percentage of Black physicians. And wow, I didn't even know that fact that really hasn't changed. But the thing is that's why I like doing this, because I believe I have a lot of helpful advice to help those who look like me hopefully get in the position I am in, and maybe even doing better than me. And that's why like we need people like me, and I know like several physicians like me, like we are very passionate about this, because I mean, we talk about health disparities and health outcomes for people. Well, I'm gonna tell you what, and this isn't saying, I have many colleagues of other races, and a lot of them have take care of people like us, and they do a great job, and I've seen it. But in order for those health disparities to change, I believe you need people that look like those people taking care of them. And that's really what it comes down to. That has to be the first priority.
No. You spot on with that. And so as I prepare for us to dig in deep, I want you to just give a synopsis of who you are, what your road has been, and how you got here.
Woo, long road, man, with a lot of twists and turns, man. So Dr. Matt Wooten, I'm a infectious disease and critical care physician. So I do both. So probably think that during this time, I mean, if you asked me 10 years ago, would I be in two specialties that specifically deal with, what we're dealing with now, man, I probably think you're crazy. And I didn't even know I was going to come down this path, actually. But so, and for the viewers, critical care means working in intensive care units. So working with the sickest of the sick, illest of the ill patients, hopefully trying to bring them back to life, bring them back to their baseline. So that's really what I do. I'm originally from Charleston, South Carolina. I grew up in Southern Virginia, like Petersburg, Virginia, like south of Richmond.
Okay.
I went to undergrad at the illustrious South Carolina State University. Go Bulldogs! I went from South Carolina to a place I never thought I would go. I ventured my way up to Ohio, out of all places. I went to Ohio University for med school. Ohio University is like in the southeast portion of Ohio. It's straight up college town, nothing really there. But it was a great opportunity for me to go up there. I was lucky to get a couple scholarships to go there. So that's why I ventured my way from South Carolina to Ohio. And then let me see, I was up in Ohio for 9 years. I went to med school there. I did my traditional internship, which not too many people do anymore. And this is kind of where the special twists and turns kind of happen, where I didn't really know exactly like really what I wanted to do. And doing a traditional internship gave me like an extra year to kind of figure out really kind of what path I want to go. So with an internship, you kind of do like a little bit of everything, from like primary care to office, in hospital work. So like internal medicine, ER, you do like some general surgery, orthopedic surgery, kind of stuff like that. Kind of gave me a little idea what I want to do. When I got to the end of that year, I initially thought I wanted to get into gastroenterology. So, of course I would have to do internal medicine before you get to GI. By the time I figured that out, it was already the end of the year. So I would have to wait another year. So I actually worked for a house call company called Visiting Physician Association for a year up in East Cleveland. And most people think that was a concierge medicine, and it was like I was going to serve a bunch of rich people. It sure wasn't that. So the company, Visiting Physician Association, has contracts with Medicaid companies in Ohio. So what happens is they would pay, these companies to employ doctors or nurse practitioners to go out to these patients' houses, because what happens is that these patients will go to the emergency room for like every single thing. So when you go to the ER for everything, healthcare costs skyrocket. So something that can easily be taken care of at the house or at your primary care office, which costs a lot less, these people are going to ER. So they're like, hey, let's send docs to these people's houses. So I'm glad I had that experience. I did that for a year. And I'm glad I had that experience, because you don't know what's going on with patients until you go to their house. All right. When you see them in the office, see them in the hospital, you only see the tip of the iceberg. When you go to their house, you see how they're living. So you see the socioeconomic condition. You see if they're taking their medications or not. You see where they're storing their medications. You see this is the conditions living in. East Cleveland is a very, very rough area. All right. But I'm glad I had that experience, because I really, really believe that kind of really gave me a wake-up call, and actually, gave me that perspective that I don't think I would have ever had. I don't think it's perspective that many physicians have about really the patients that they take care of. So after I did that, I was able to get internal medicine residency. So I got back into, moved back to Columbus, was there for 3 years. Then after that, I moved to Eastern North Carolina, East Carolina University, go Pirates. So I was there where I did my fellowship in infectious disease as well as critical care medicine. And I graduated from that actually back in June. And then now I'm here in Columbia, South Carolina, working for Prisma Health, which is University of South Carolina School of Medicine. And that's great. I split, I've been doing this for about a couple months now. And what I do is half my time is in intensive care unit at one of the community sites in Sumter, which is like an hour east of Columbia. And then the other half of my time is infectious disease at the main tertiary center in Columbia. And then we also cover some other community hospitals as well too. And this is my road, man. I will say that, you mentioned like kind of challenges that I've had is, I noticed that a lot of my classmates, they had someone in their family already in medicine. Didn't really matter what specialty. And so they already had the blueprint on how to like navigate. Me, I didn't have that. All right. I have a lot of successful people in my family, mainly educators. I had like my mom, my uncle worked for Department of Defense. So I mean, my dad's an engineer. So it's like, I've had people in other fields, but in terms of like medicine, not really. And it's a whole different ballgame. It's not just like, you applying for a job and and really that's it. I mean, it's so many years of, just grinding and then a lot of, just kind of painful lessons. And things that you only gonna, like, the only way you're gonna be prepared for is somebody did it. So, and can give you those, give you those lessons, tell you, hey, watch out for this, watch out for these pitfalls. So I was learning the hard way. I luckily did find a mentor probably towards the end of med school, kind of like early part in like my residency, which is kind of the reason why I'm really passionate about helping people that look like me, be able to, kind of propel their way through, where it's like, hey, I want to do this. I don't know how to do it. Or I don't see people that look like me. And I believe I went through all that to be in this position to help people who look like me, get through. Because as many people, told me, and there are times I would get discouraged, but there's a lot of people telling me, it's like, man, hey, look here, Matt, we need you, man. Yeah, all the BS, man, that you might have went through, man, and kind of coming up all the way up until now, man, they're like, man, we need you, man. And I'm gonna tell you what, we need more people like us taking care of us. So I will name one specific challenge, where when I started, I remember my first block in med school, and the size of the binder that I had in that 4-week block was like bigger than the entire senior year of college. And I'm just like, man, I broke down for probably about 30 seconds, man. And I'm just like, man, how am I going to learn all this stuff, man? And, luckily I did well. And then it got harder and then I stuck with it. And what I want, probably the thing that just popped in my mind, what I want people to understand is like, man, it's okay to struggle. And I think that was one of the things I had to learn, because I always believed that I need to know everything. I had to be right all the time. And I had that pressure because I know that there was only like a few people who looked like me in my class. Right? And so I had that pressure on me. So like, man, I gotta be right all the time. I gotta know everything, and really you don't. You really don't. And the thing is that once you realize that, and actually I didn't realize this until my fellowship, it took me years to figure this out. And I realized that once I was like, you know what, because I was working with other people, some of my non-Black counterparts, and like they didn't know everything either. And then I took that pressure, and I think a lot of us have that pressure that, man, we gotta we gotta know everything, we gotta be on point every single second. I'm like, no, you don't. It's okay to struggle and make mistakes, but you gotta learn from them though. And if you learn from them, you take it a little bit at a time. You take it a little bit at a time. And remember, you never lose. It's just lessons learned. You get a little bit at a time, and then you'll get there.
You really hammered home some challenges or barriers, I think, for our community,
right,
in terms of why people think they don't have what it takes to get there. And so dispelling those myths,
right,
is what's going to allow us to be able to change that number from 5.4% that has been consistent for over 120 years to get to 7.8 and so on and so forth. So let me ask you this, Dr. Wooten.
Yeah.
What was your plan? Because you said that like you didn't plan to get here. Nope. So I mean, what was the point or the intersection that pushed you to the medicine field? And then what did you put in place to ensure you would get accepted even as a doctor? Or it may be some people who want to be nurses or nurse practitioners out there.
Yeah. So
what's the path?
So what's your first question? I'm going to tell you where it changed me. I always thought I was going to be involved with some of the sports. I always thought I was going to be like sports medicine, orthopedic surgery. I really did. I really thought I was going to be somewhere in that realm. And it came to a point where I had to think, and particularly my mom would always tell me, she was like, man, think about what you could do for at least like 30 years. All right. And surgery was okay. Don't get me wrong. There's some parts of surgery I like, and kind of the reason why I'm in critical care is because you still do some procedures. So you got to place like lines of people's veins, arteries. I drain fluid from people's lungs, people's abdomen. Kind of something that came to mind. I had to place a chest tube because dealing with COVID, and that was a really, really large guy. And I mean, he's only like mid-30s, and he came in and, he had something called pneumothorax. So, he had air outside the lungs. So I had to place a chest. So I do things like that. So the thing is that.
Hold up.
Yeah.
Before you go into, is that similar to a sucking chest wound?
Similar, yeah. You might see it on some of the medical shows. Now, we don't do that anymore.
I'm laughing because we've been trained how to do that in the military.
Yeah, but this is, so I actually did that yesterday. That was the end of my 7-day stretch last week. So that's why I kind of like critical care, because I get to do some procedures and stuff. But then in terms of surgery, I'm like, man, do I really want to like do this? Because I mean, the schedules are rough, man. Shout out to all the surgeons, man. I mean, that schedule is rough. And see what I like about critical care, I work 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. A lot of times it ends up being 14 hours days. But the thing is, it's usually like 7 days on and then 7 days off. And then also do infected disease. So my schedule's a little different. So it's like when I'm on, I'm on. So, but the thing is that when you're in surgery, I mean, you really don't call a lot. You might get called all the times of the night. And I thought about that and I'm just thinking, I don't know if I really want to do that. So that's kind of what really kind of shifted me. And it was challenging because out of med school, most people, they get in residency right back. Me, I actually had a, kind of best way to kind of think about it. Is kind of I'm trying to think kind of like in sports where, all right, NBA, you might go to the G League or something, or if you're baseball, you might go to minor leagues for like a year or something and kind of figure out what you want to do, build yourself up a little bit more. So that's kind of what happened with me. And then really from there, it gave me an extra year because then I got to do several different things. Because see, in med school is really tough because your rotation's only 4 weeks. Sometimes, I mean, some places, depending where you go, it's maybe 6 to 8 weeks, but it's not really long enough for you to believe, yeah, this is what I really want to do in like 4 to 8 weeks. All right. Some people know if they've already had somebody in the medical field that can kind of give them some advice, or maybe they shadow some people. But me, I didn't have that. So I did shadow a primary care physician when I was in college, but that was outpatient. That was it. I knew I didn't want to do that. So there's so many other fields of medicine. So the thing is that actually having that extra year really helped me out. And because I was able to, have longer rotations, but in different fields. And then I really got to think, okay, I like this. I didn't like this. This is something I could do for years and years. Now going to the next part, because like I said, I initially thought I wanted to go into gastroenterology because I like doing the, scopes, looking at people's esophagus, stomach, and other end. People want to think about that, but because one of the best rotations I had actually, in like my 3rd or 4th year of med school was with this GI physician. He was awesome. He actually let me, do some things, let me do the scopes, and I thought it was cool. But then once again, you have to go through other specialties, because you could do something for like a couple weeks and think you like it, but doesn't mean you're going to like it for a span of 30, 35 years.
Right.
So that's really the main challenge. Was like, hey man, kind of need a little bit of a longer time to figure out what I want to do. And then also when I don't think too many traditional internships exist anymore, but when I'm also going for residency again, even though I was going for another field, I'm competing against the other people who just graduated. So a lot of people don't really know that. So that was probably an extra challenge. But like I said, luckily things worked out. In terms of like my overall path, so I would say starting from undergrad all the way up to now, right? So the path was South Carolina State, I think, has a pretty stellar biology program. And the great things that they did was that they made sure their students got internships. And that's really how I got into med school, man. I remember before I even like interviewed, I ran into the dean of admissions in the bathroom, and he even spotted me out. He's like, "You Matt Wooten, right?" And he was like, "Look, man," he said, your resume is stellar. I mean, I did internships at the USDA, I did internships at the NIH. And so he was like, you had kind of major names on your CV that made it think like this guy takes advantage of opportunities that come his way. And so I went to an institution, South Carolina State HBCUs. I still believe in our HBCUs. We need to invest in them. I've been donating every year since 2014, man. I'm going to be donating more now since I'm out of training. I'm making some real doctor money now. So
I know that's right.
So man, so because the thing is that when I was in South Carolina State, I had that attention. I had professors that were invested in me. They're like, all right, man, we see you serious. Because the thing is that if you present yourself as serious and about your business, people will invest in you. All right. You will find at least one person, one or two people that are investing in you. And the thing is that once you find those people, you know, latch onto them, like keep them up to date on everything, because man, they have connections, they can help you. And like, and what way I would like to say it is like, man, get your team together. Get your team together, man, because you can't do this by yourself. You're gonna need some people to vouch for you and write letters of recommendations for you. So, you know, kind of what happened to me is like say getting those internships, they knew that was important. So that was one thing that helped me. The other thing that I will say that will help for anybody that wants to go into the medical field, and whether, and it's not just medicine, if you want to go to dental school, those are kind of two things that pop in my mind, or optometry, those things. You a lot of times have to take these well, not really certification tests, but admission tests. That's where a lot of people kind of trip up, right? Because the rest of their application may look stellar, right? You made good grades in college. You graduated top of your class and high GPA. You did your internships, but a lot of times it's these admission tests that stump people. I mean, it pretty much kind of stumped me too. Now, luckily, where I went to med school, they looked at the holistic approach. They looked at the whole person, right? That's typically what schools of. So I went to a doctor of osteopathic medicine school, a DO school, which is not. I mean, it's more and more popular now. They're having more and more schools, and actually, a lot of those schools tended to be in the Northeast, Midwest, and out West. Now, a lot of those schools have moved to the East Coast and down South because there's so. I mean, we're at a physician shortage, man, and so that's why I think it's really a good time for us to come through, man, because man, you have so many of our people, man, that are in, you know, probably more of these like rural areas that need, you know, that need a physician, man. And a lot of people aren't really attracted those areas. It's like, oh, I don't want to live out there, but I'm like, you don't have to do that. Where I do the hospital, I do my critical care, you know, medicine where I cover the intensive care unit, it's like an hour away.
Okay.
I drive out there and come back. And a lot of physicians out there do the same thing. So I think that's kind of what turns people off. But you know, you'll be able to make it work. And the thing is that there's so many of us. I mean, we people don't understand we are really at a position shortage, man, because of the grind that it takes, man. I graduated from med school like 8.5 years ago. And I just finished medical training in June.
Wow.
I mean, count the years, man, but it's all worth it because I knew what I wanted to do and I know the purpose that I have. So and I'll add this point too, which other people don't really talk about, is not, you know, like I said, I work with a lot of great non-Black, you know, physicians, colleagues, think they're good, but you know, a lot of these places, man, they have a lot of foreign medical grads coming over here, and I mean, a lot of them are talented, but those pockets could be for us because they're out there, you know, providing care to our people. And I mean, not knocking them. I know a lot of, I mean, I think they're good physicians, but I mean, how is it that we have people coming over from India now, you know, Afghanistan, and Biden can give 6.3 billion to them, but we can't get squat. And yeah, people don't know me. I'm a very blunt person. Okay, you may not have met a doctor like me ever before. I'm a very blunt person. Okay, I get straight to the point. Now I don't have a filter because I believe I have information to share that people need to hear. But we have all those people come over here, coming in these communities that that's serving our people. And those slots could be for us. So when I hear certain Black people say, man, I can't make it, I don't know how to do this, I'm like, oh man, there's a field, so many fields of opportunities for us. And for us to like, you go to the med schools and you get your training and you can go back and serve your own people.
Look, so you really hammering something, because earlier you spoke to other demographics have relatives who have went through this process, which helped them learn how to navigate the process. And what's important about our conversation and dialogue tonight is we are creating that blueprint for you tonight by Dr. Wooten sharing what his experience was, right? But more importantly, he told you, make sure you focus on those classes in biology, get an internship. When you find somebody who's willing to invest in you, stay connected to them, provide them information, because it's our social capital that allows us to elevate from one position, because again, it's about what you know, but it's also about who you know to allow you to gain entry in certain segments that historically we may have not been able to breach. So as you go through that, I'm also thinking about like, what are some of the other suggestions you will provide besides the internships? Provide the connecting to the social capital. Are there some other classes that you think best prepare a young person for that difficult transition into med school?
What I will say is that I mean, a lot of places, I mean, like for example, South Carolina State. So the curriculum that we have, I mean, besides, let me see, like cellular biology, that was probably one of the toughest courses I had. Organic chemistry, and Ryan, I tell people that unfortunately the way the education is set up, I'm gonna tell you what, man, a lot of courses. You think about how much of what you learn in high school you used in college. And I'm gonna tell you how much what you learn in college you actually use in your life right now.
But Doc, and that's what you hitting at.
And so my thing is that I'm telling people, because it's like I'm thinking about how much I learned in college to help me in medical school. Maybe organic chemistry definitely didn't really do anything for me. Biochemistry a little bit. I took a human anatomy and physiology class. That actually was very beneficial, actually. Those are probably the courses, man. I mean, and so what I want to let people know is that, man, this is a game, man. A lot of stuff is a game. And I'm giving people the blueprint, okay? Because see, the thing is that when you're out here and a lot of people talking to you, they'll give you the PC answers. They're like, oh, you gotta do this. No, man. Let me tell you this, man. I am going to give you the hardcore reality that not too many people are going to share with you, and not because they're bad people. It's one, they either really want to believe and I'm not saying they don't want to share the information with you, but some people have been kind of indoctrinated in this is what I was told, so then I got to go tell these people the same thing, right? And this is how it is nice and jolly, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, no, it's not. I'm going to tell you what, man, it's kind of cutthroat out here, all right? So let me tell you this. A lot of things are a game. I will flat out and say it. You're going to have to get through certain gauntlets to get to where you want to go. Those things that you learned before the gauntlet, and some of that stuff you may not, apply once you get past the gauntlet, because they have to weed people out. This is a competition. It doesn't matter what it is. Things are built on competition, all right? And you have to weed people out. And so the earlier you know the game, the better you are at it. And then once you get through, okay, well, I learned these things. So then, all right, this is what I can take with me. And then other stuff is just like, all right, I don't need that anymore. So, the part of getting into med school, I will say is, and really and truly, let me kind of rewind, because really kind of started with me in high school. When you're in high school, let me tell you this. This is where you need to get started. And the people that are my classmates, I mean, you learn so much. And luckily, my parents did great for me. But, I took honors classes and dual enrollment classes, sometimes AP classes. It starts in high school because it preps you up for college, and then you go for it. So it's like, man, I took actually a human anatomy, physiology class, and a psychology class. So 2 classes I took my senior year in high school through a junior college, and I was able to get college credit, and they were dual enrollment classes.
Okay.
So that set me up really, for kind of helping me in college. Actually, after my freshman year in college, I already had enough credits to be a sophomore, but I mean, I still did 4 years of college, because why rush college? I had fun in college. All right. I mean, like you gotta because building your social network, all right, that's very important too. And just knowing how to socialize. I would just say that. But I will say that if I can go back and do something again, this is something I would add to the manual, is that when I go back to taking those admission tests, see, you have certain schools that, that's kind of already part of their curriculum, particularly if you go to Ivy League schools, right? Remember, when you coming out of college, see, you got to compete with everybody, right? But this is where we can shine. This is where I like to highlight our HBCUs, because my godmother, rest her soul, she passed like May of 2020, and she was a PhD. She was actually her son and I, we called each other brothers, man. But she was my high school guidance counselor, and she would always tell me, she was like, "Hey Matthew, like, anytime these schools are looking for Black students, they're going to go to HBCUs." And so what HBCUs need to do is, okay, I mean, I went to South Carolina State. They are hooking us up with internships, check. I had people invest in me, check. That allowed me to perform well and graduate summa cum laude in top of my class, check, right? So we only need to complete this one little part right here, right? It's the mission test. Mm-hmm. So you're gonna have to invest some money. Our school's gonna have to do it, but also, you know, if I can go back and do it again, and I mean, I came from a middle-class family, we had the money to do it. I should have said, hey, you know what? You know, hey, I need to take this prep course. You can't be afraid to take prep course and spend some money on the things that you want. A lot of times people will look at some things like I'm spending money, but you can't look at it as an expense. You look at it as an investment. And that's what you have to do. And investments, you're going to spend some money. But if you want to accomplish the goals that you want to accomplish, you have to kind of spend some money, you have to invest. And that's probably what I should have done. And I tell people, like, when you take these admission tests, you got to take a prep course, because when I got to med school, and for my board exams, I was taking prep courses. I've always taken prep courses. And then because I took those prep courses, I've done well. And so what I'm saying is, if I could rewind back now, I don't regret why I went to med school. You know, it allowed me to where I am today. I got a couple scholarships, and hey, you know, it's helped me out greatly financially. But I knew if I took that prep course for the MCAT, the Medical College Admissions Test is what they call it, and I took a prep course, I know it would have done a lot better, and I would have probably had way more options for med school. But that's here or there. But, you know, that's why I'm particularly sharing those things, you know, with your viewers, because, hey, for those who are interested, you know, hey, I'm gonna give you the blueprint. And the main thing is that MCAT. And if you do well on that, that's the ticket, man. And these board exams aren't there for just for play. And a lot of times people will say, well, it's not about the test, not like that. Well, I equate things to sports. It ain't, well, it's just a game, blah, blah, blah. Oh, not. You got teams that, okay, they might have did decent, or maybe they had some injuries early in the season, and then they ramped up towards the end of the season. They had, you know, football, well, now they got to an 18-game season. But heck, all right, you got that team that's 10-6 that won the last 6 games, and then they go roll through the playoffs and then win the Super Bowl. It's kind of the same analogy, right? You do well on them tests, right? Those tests are the playoffs.
Indeed.
So, yeah, man.
And you laid something out that's important. Like, so I wanted my two to go in a different way, but they wanted to both do something tied to medical.
Right.
So because of that, like, so my first one went through a program. It was in Boston through Harvard, like 8 days while she was I think she was a junior. Mm-hmm. And so 8 days she got to see live surgeries, participate in clinical. So this is all prep work, so that we have exposure we need, because it wasn't many people who looked like us while we was up there. And I got to experience that with her. But then the youngest, and I talked with you on my youngest one, she, same thing. She went to George Washington to a camp, and then she said, you know what, Dad, I think I'm gonna take this. So she's taking CNA, right?
Okay.
So she's actually finishing all that up.
Right.
And she'll have that certification before she finished. So she's got the little basic stuff, right, that actually allows her to understand what goes on. And so all we want them to do is to have hope. Once you have hope and you can accomplish that, now I know to have this conversation around the MCAT with her and taking some of the prep courses. So for everybody that's watching, everything that Dr. Wooten is saying is a different play in the playbook that's going to allow you to execute when we get to the Super Bowl, the NBA Finals, the PGA Golf Tour, whatever you're interested in. But be mindful that there is a preparation that's vital and the exposure, so that when they get in that scenario, they're not overwhelmed, which is going to lead me to my next question, which is, have you ever second guessed yourself on your journey? That's the first part. And then the second part is, how did you overcome those limiting beliefs?
Hey, man. Second guess,
because you know I already knew the answer.
Yeah. Second guess myself. That was after my traditional internship, actually, because so the thing is that I knew, like, because by the time I figured out what I wanted to do, it was towards the end of that year, and I would have to wait another year to get into, you know, I was at that time an internal medicine program. So I had to figure out something to do in the meantime. It's much harder now than it was, say, back in the day, where, you know, a lot of people, they only did like an internship. They did 1 year medical training, and then you can open up your own practice. You could like work for urgent care, you know, those things. I was actually trying to find urgent care to work for. Mm-hmm. And things just weren't, you know, working out. And then, so I'm gonna be real, I had a period. So this was going back to summer 2014. So probably between the end of June of 2014 all the way to probably about the end of September 2014, man. I'll be real, I was depressed, man. I thought I failed, man. Failed to the point that I couldn't come back. Yeah, I didn't really have anything that was, you know, anything that works that I could say, hey, you know, any promising leads for the next year. And you know, so that was definitely why I second guessed myself, man. During that time, and I'm gonna tell you what, it was a real humbling experience, because, you know, I was trying to do anything. I was like, shoot, do I need to go like work in the lab somewhere? Do I just need to go shadow somebody? I mean, my mom even brought up, Jay, man, you might be a substitute teacher or something like that. And I was going through all this. And also too, during this time, of course, when I wasn't working, wasn't making any money. So when I got to find something to make some money, I mean, yeah, it's not like I was struggling, but also too, just being a man, it's like, man, look, I got to see some money coming in that bank account. If you don't, you don't feel good about yourself at all. So, I mean, it was a kind of really dark time. How did I get through it? Well, my uncle told me, he was like, hey, look here, Matthew, man, you work too hard, man. He was like, things are going to come together. So it was kind of faith that I had. Also, luckily, my mentor, who, you know, shout out to Dr. Sanders, man, he, you know, he actually like reached out to me and said, hey, what I was doing. And I was in Cleveland at the time, he was back in Columbus, and he was just like, Matt, he was like, send me a CV. He was like, and I told him kind of what my plans were. He's like, send me a CV, man. Make sure, you know, and this is why I go back to the importance of having a mentor and having a social network, because if it wasn't for him, I wouldn't be where I am today, because he was vice president of medical education for the hospital I ended up doing my internal medicine residency. I met him through my church the first time I lived in Columbus. My last 2 years of med school, before I went to Cleveland, then I came back to Columbus. So that's why I mention all the time about, man, if there's someone that invests in you, latch on to them, because they might be able to help you. And so, man, he pulled me up out of my darkest times, man. And luckily I was able to, you know, get into internal medicine residency at a hospital in Columbus, Ohio. And then while I was there, I became chief resident, and was able to move on to fellowship. And then in my fellowship, I was, when I was completing the infectious disease portion of my fellowship, I was chief fellow there. So, you know, kind of like I said, going back where, yeah, I second guessed myself, but I think it was, you know, I don't want to get too religious, but I am a praying man. I believe that, you know, there's certain things in my life, man, that, you know, hey, if I didn't acknowledge God's prayers and said those prayers, you know, man, it just kind of had those one-on-one convos with him, man, and said those prayers and didn't have that faith. But what I will add to that point is that, you know, because my favorite book in the Bible, James, outside of my name, Matthew, but James is like, man, faith without works is meaningless.
Yes.
A lot of times people think, you know, and particularly in our community, you know, people think that I'm going to pray, and it's all the way I'm leaving to God's hands. Well, I'm like, yeah, well, that's good. But man, God needs to see you working. He needs to see you hustling. God's just going to look at you. It's like, oh, so you want me to pull this whole thing? You want me to do all this? I'm like, I'm need to see you advocating for yourself. I'm going to need to see you working for yourself. And then he'll come in. He'll come in and do and push you across the finish line. So wow. Yeah.
So as you touched on that, right? That's a perfect segue, because the other piece for me that I'm thinking in this moment is this. You laid the blueprint out. You talked about some of the challenges. But the most important piece is this. It's going to be tough. Young people are going to have to be resilient. understanding our meeting group with You Good Bro and some of the other things we often and frequently talk about. You hear Dr. Wooten? Oh, let me do this and pause. So the other part and component to this is this. As we continue to navigate all these difficult challenges along the journey to becoming a doctor that is also a paid doctor, there will be many challenges, obstacles, what are all considered opportunities. But within that, there is work that sometimes get difficult, which can cause anxiety, which can cause depression, which leads into another topic that you and I get to talk about pretty frequently, which is our emotional wellness. And I won't use the term, mental health is a term, but if anything, I'm going to say men heal, women heal. So from that space, what, and the reason I'm leading to this, Dr. Wooten, is because I know that in the medical profession that doctors have a lot of instances where if I lose somebody, if somebody doesn't make it, that's a lot to deal with and internalize. And so you need as much support. And how do you, from a mental health or emotional wellness standpoint, make sure from a psychology standpoint, besides the psychology class you took in undergrad, how do you, where do you create and grab your outlets from to be able to purge any toxicity, any trauma, and so forth, to let you continue to be comfortable and okay?
So I would say the first thing is that you have to make sure that everything else in your life is right. Now, it's much easier said than done. And the reason is because you deal with so much at work, and particularly the environment I'm working in, particularly during this time, I'm around a lot of death, unfortunately, working in an intensive care unit. You're around a decent amount of it pre-COVID, but now it's just skyrocketing, man. Burnout is a major thing among doctors and nurses. And forget about them, because, they're a lot of times, they're dealing, particularly in intensive care unit, it's a 1-to-2 ratio. So a lot of times one is taking care of two patients all day, but they're in and out of the rooms all day. A lot of these patients are in the hospital for, at least a week, 2 weeks, maybe like a month. And it's like, you start building relationships with a lot of these patients, man, and you're seeing patient after patient just die. And so you have to make sure everything else is straight. Because what happens is the rest of your life outside of work is chaotic. Then what you're going to do is that you're going to bring all the, drama and trauma, D&T, drama and trauma at work home with you. And you can't do that. You have to have those moments where you kind of decompress, because you're not going to be able to perform your job as well. And so, I would say with me, I think first thing is to have your outlets. First, you need to think about, you kind of got to get a little bit selfish, and selfish to the point where you have to maintain your own well-being. So do things you like to do. So, and constructive things. So for me, I like to lift weights, and in the past 6 months, I got into golf. And I really enjoy golf just because, it's an outdoor sport. Baseball was my main sport, all throughout high school. So golf kind of reminds me of that. I like being outside, and particularly at this time of year. This time of year is actually perfect, man. This weather is phenomenal. So it's like, man, being out there on golf course, and, all that open space, and, now I'm getting better at golf. So now, man, hearing that sound come off the off the driver, man, is great. And so, man, but it's really therapeutic. You have to have that, man, because you just can't be in just drama, man. You just seeing death, man. Last week was rough for me, man. I think I had like 10 deaths last week, man, and I had some more deaths because I fill out. And now, granted, I think a lot of part of the job, I think, where I'm there is that helping patients and families, kind of go through the grieving process. And, besides, like I said, the most important part of my job, which I really love, is that, hey, I could, bring a patient back, or like if they're in a regular Florida hospital, maybe for a week or some change, and, maybe the physician out there didn't have it right, or they didn't quite think of something, and I'm knocking them, we work with good physicians. But the thing is that, oh man, what we've been doing for this patient didn't work. Then they come to my unit, I have a different set of eyes looking at them. I can have some different ideas, and then they get better. I had an experience like that this weekend. I had this patient was in the hospital for a week and a half, and then he came to my unit, and then I had some different thoughts, and man, they got better in a couple of days, and I was able to send them back on the floor. So so I'll get to that point where what your job is that, man, any area that there's some light or something that you can celebrate it, don't be afraid to celebrate it, because you need to have some wins at your, at work. Particularly during this time, you got to have some wins. So any little win, man, celebrate it. So that's probably number one. Two, have your own outlets. Like I said, something where even if you just go for a walk, I mean, like I say, if you go walk, run, lift weights, like do golf, wherever it is, as long as it's constructive and as long as it's legal, then
right.
You gotta have the outlets. Three, and like I said, this is definitely easier said than done, but always try to, it's easy to say remove the emotion from it and try to think logical, but the more you can do that, the better off you will be. So, for me, I consider myself very realistic. I'm not pessimistic, and I'm not really optimistic. Now, if I'm optimistic, I'm cautiously optimistic, right? Because I have many, many conversations with families, particularly during this time, and I have to bring the right emotion to those conversations. Of course, not too little, but not too much. And it's because I have my bank. I have my emotional bank, and I have to appropriately expend all what's in my emotional bank to make sure that each family gets the same amount.
You touched on something that's really important. And so one of the things I always tell people is to give from your excess and not your essence, because if you give from your essence, you will cease to exist, because you will not have anything else to invest or deposit somewhere. But I know this for sure. I've watched and see how you interact. Now, I have a friend who's dealing with cancer. And so he was trying to leverage some alternative ways to address the cancer through natural philosophies. Well, did all the research and all that. The specific doctor went straight into chemo and radiology, right? And they got mad, and it was very transactional, if you will, where it wasn't about like, okay, I don't care how you feel, I'm just gonna say what I gotta say. And it's a difference in terms of being blunt,
right?
But if you're not listening,
right,
and we know that there are practices when these things work. And so in that instance, I think that was a lost opportunity, because what it did was it pushed them against other doctors. Said all doctors are not that way.
Right.
You just experienced someone who I can't even make an excuse for. Right. But I've seen your approaches, and I know how you are. And so I'm saying that to say, if there's a young person on here considering going down that field,
right,
that you have proven methodologies and best practices. However, people are people. And so you have to be mindful on how you interact with them.
And the thing is this is why I go to the social aspect, right? Like you building those social skills is important. Unfortunately, like a lot of physicians, right, don't really have those social skills because you're not really taught. And where that's really where a paradigm shift is happening in medicine. Actually, I mean, it was kind of happening probably over about 10 years ago. My first year of med school was 2009. And what my med school did, because they focused on the whole person, we were doing clinicals like our first year and just getting to learn to talk to patients. That's where it really started. They didn't really put much emphasis on whether you have the right diagnosis and what your plan was, you focus on the history and the physical history, talking to the patient, learning how to talk to people. And most people don't, like I said, most of us don't have that skill, talking to people. That's the first thing. The physical exam skills you're going to learn later, but really it's talking to people. And so it's so important because, one, patients have to have trust in you. And what frustrates a lot of physicians, it's like, hey, you know what? You can't talk above people, okay? Or talk, or talk at them, all right? You have to, and what I like to do is, particularly, in the environment I work in, when I talk to families, I'm like, hey, look, what all do you understand about what is going on? Because then when I do that, I put the ball in your court and I'm sit back and listen. And they are like, man, this doctor came here to listen to me. Yeah, because instead of me talking at you, because it could be two things. One, you're saying all this stuff to them, but then they might not even understand. And it's like, man, this dude's talking to me like I feel stupid. And this guy talking at me and he don't even care what I think. If I come in there, it's like, bam, this is what you do, bam, 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 bam. Oh, I don't like this guy, blah, blah, blah. But then the flip side is that I like to give people a little more credit in terms of their medical knowledge than, most, where, you have people that they may know some things. So when I say, hey, tell me, like, let me know what you believe is going on. And then I get to assess their intellect level in terms of like, and I don't judge whether it's good or bad, whatever else, but it allows me to say, okay, I know what your level of comprehension is. All right, let me, adjust my the way that I'm talking to you based on kind of your level. And then I think the talent that you have to have, I think particularly as a physician, you need to be able to break down super complicated medical jargon and something real simple, because if a doctor's able to do that, that means they understand what is going on. And so, and this is where we can come in, man, and with those social skills, where it's like, okay, all right, I'm gonna put the ball in your court, I'm gonna sit back and listen. Because people like listeners. They're like, okay, wow, this guy actually listened to me, because then you're giving that person power. You're giving them a voice. That's one of the easiest and the most accessible source of power that all of us have is our voice, right? So then if you're like, hey, talk to me, right? All right, let me know what you think is going on. And then they're like, wow, okay, we build that trust, okay? And then when you come in, see, the thing is that, there was like this old saying where there's like, like people don't care about how much you know until they know how much you care, right?
Maya Angelou.
Yeah, very simple quote, right? But I deal with that because, not to rag on your other positions, but there's been some situations I've been in where, and a lot of times a lot of physicians don't really understand this, right? They may because like I said, a lot of places you don't really work on your social skills, right? But it's probably the most important thing you have, right? So I'll come in certain situations with, maybe a patient that's been there for a while and the family, and then the nurses and everybody else is like, man, we kind of have a rough time with the family, blah, 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 like this. But then when I get to talk to them, they're like, oh, okay. I had that meeting with them and I let them talk. And then I come in and it's like, well, I'm sorry that, this was communicated, effectively to you. Sorry, miscommunication. This is what it is, blah, blah. And then they're like, okay, I feel a lot better now. I mean, that's probably the most important skill that I have. And that's where we can shine. So this is where we can shine, particularly when it comes to our people.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And so that's why I love doing things like this, because there is so, I'm telling you, I like people say field of dreams, field of opportunities, man. There is so much room for us to like come in and shine right now. And what I want, and this is something that is going to have to be retaught and relearned, I think, in our community, is that, man, look, yes, we've had struggles. All right. We understand that, but we need solutions. We got to be able to move forward. And yes, there are challenges. Yes, but like, there's a way, okay? there are ways to get this done. And, yes, you acknowledge, okay, yes, these are struggles, blah, 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 but you got to have solutions, all right? And, because if you don't focus enough time on solutions on what you can do, then you're still going to be stuck. And then we're still going to have these same statistics. And we can't, man. I'm about solutions. I'm about moving forward, man. And that's what I'm offering myself, man. I'm like, hey, okay, because that's also that part too. I've worked around a lot of positions look like me that I think have passion of helping us help pull others up. But I'm gonna tell you what, not everybody's like that. Unfortunately, I've come across a couple Black positions in my career. They ain't really have any interest because they thought, oh well, you ain't go through what I went through, right?
Right.
You do have that too. It ain't all other races, white supremacy, or all this. It's not that. Okay. I mean, we have some of us, and the thing is, a lot of times we shoot ourselves in the foot. So, I mean, so and that's the uncomfortable truth. But I can tell you from experience, that's what's happened to me. I mean, don't get me wrong, I've dealt with, yes, me certain white people, but I've had a lot of white people that helped me out. And yeah, I've had a couple Black positions that didn't want to help me, and then I had some that did. Most of them did. My mentor was, a Black man, and so where I kind of circle around, and I'm gonna let you get the next question. Where, if you come across someone that, and I'm gonna hammer this home because this is where it really comes down to. If you find someone that doesn't, yes, it was great if they're Black, but you'd be surprised at who you'll meet. And there's a lot of great people out here. Despite everything's going on, I'm gonna tell you what, like, there are a lot of great people out here. And if there's someone that takes interest into you, doesn't matter who it is, like, man, okay, you invest in me, you want to do it, latch on to that person. All right. I got a team of people that some look like me, some don't. But they saw something in me. They're like, okay, I've had a lot of my letters of recommendations come from people that didn't look like me. And I say that, because it's like you'll never know who it is either.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And that's how you have to play this game. That's what you got to do.
Well, you just named it. First of all, you got to understand it's a game.
Yep.
Secondly, you got to understand it's not checkers, it's chess.
Yep.
And then thirdly, you hammered home something that was kind of what was in my mind as we were talking to ask a question about, which is there is the theoretical portion. Then there's the practical application. We know, the difference if you can take a complex subject and break it down to something a third grader can understand. But then for me, one of the most important things, particularly with some of the suicide rates and different things with medical practitioners, is understanding emotional intelligence. That's where you understand who you are, you know how to regulate yourself, but then more importantly, you understand the fabric or demographic of social, right?
Right.
The social perspective in terms of the customers you serve, how it has impacts, the nurses and the people who you interact with on a daily basis. And then you're able to leverage from a social regulation standpoint and lead as a doctor from a place of trust. Right. And so framing all that out, I guess my last question is, how do we cultivate environments that will replicate not the school or prison pipeline, but the medicine to doctor pipeline for them to don that white jacket that you're wearing right now? Right.
So I'm gonna tell you what, first, man, I believe that you're gonna need more people like us. And I will say this, hope the ladies don't get mad at me, but man, we need more Black males, more Black males in leaderships, more Black male positions. And not knocking the women, but I mean, this is where, we need to really like step up, right? And it kind of starts with, all right, if you have more of us in there, because it kind of starts with people like me, right? And then, having our mentor programs, they're at East Carolina University, viewers, they have this Brody Rise program. And so
say that program again. It's
called Brody Rise. So and I think me and a few other physicians, we did kind of gave like kind of these lectures on like certain, we used to like pick the organ system and we talked about it. But this is kind of a program for, I think they kind of say it's like underprivileged, like they say minorities. I mean, it was mainly Black people. It had a couple of Hispanic people in there. They might be, underprivileged but they're academically talented. And so by like having these mentorship programs, and then they get to see people like us giving them words of advice, kind of getting their knowledge up and all that stuff, then you build connections that way. Like I said, it always comes back to that, and it starts early, because I tell you, a lot of my non-Black counterparts, I mean, this is how it works. I've sat back and I've seen it work. Okay.
Right.
And this is how it is. And so luckily, I think for my parents not being like medical, I mean, they understood how this game works, because it's really not that much different. It doesn't matter what other field you go into, right? And so, but I think it's going to start out with, you need, I think, a lot of Black, I'm going to say Black male physicians. I like, but definitely Black women matter too. I'm not knocking them, but they, at least from a lot of the programs that we had lately, and like kind of what we had with ECU, I remember we had something, it was like 15 undergrads, and when we were at this thing, it was like all girls. I'm like, well, this is good. But I mean, heck, man, because I will say this is a very challenging career, okay? And it will wear on you. And not saying they can't do it, but you gotta have more, you gotta have more males, because I believe that we need to be in these spots because we need to be the ones lead, okay? That's really genetically, biologically who we are, okay? And so I think you need to have more of us in there, all together, but because I think a lot of our Black boys be left behind, okay? And so I had to throw that in there because of kind of what I'm seeing.
So I think you spot on.
Yeah, and I'm not gonna girls. Hey, look, man. One of my mentors, I have a couple mentees that, and they're great. I mean, I think they're going to do really well. But
and they excel.
But we got to have us in there too, man. We can't forget about our boys, man. We got to have us in there.
Well, I'm glad you threw it out there, because when you look at the test scores, girls do well after third grade. Boys are performing very well, and then their test scores drop, which tells me this is something more than just them not testing well. There are some systemic or institutional things that encourage those scores to dip. And so you need more representation of Black male educators and Black male doctors, because they normally are the less in number. And so we needed to be equitable across the board between our women and our men.
Right. And so like I said, I had to definitely bring it up, and then also to which this and not to really get too far off the topic, but things, and I'm sure you know a lot about this, probably more than I do. But the thing is kind of what I've been hearing and kind of reading up on, where it's like the educational environment for a lot of Black males is that and really for men, for males and for boys in general, but particularly for Black boys, right? Like the traditional classroom environment, right? It's really not for us, man. It's really not. And boys and girls learn a little bit differently. And so that's the other part where, where I'm sharing this manual, right? I believe I truly have the blueprint, okay? And it's going to take more of us to be in there, with that blueprint. And it's like, hey, there are different ways to learn, all right? Because there's some very smart people that they, that may never have made it because they stumbled across something, or they had a couple of classes that, they might have had a teacher that really wasn't that good. And then, oh, well, because these couple classes stripped them up, we might have lost out on a lot of potential, And so where people like me and several people look like we come in, where it's like, we can give you that advice, because really and truly, it actually starts in high school. All right, now you'll hear stories where people maybe barely kind of made out of high school and got to college, and then like, okay, yes, those things happen. Don't get me wrong. But I truly believe that the earlier the preparation starts, the better. All right. And then when you start preparing earlier, you are now surrounding yourself with people like you. And then you can continue to encourage each other. And that's really, because like I said, you need that support system. Not just the people that can help propel you to the next level, but also people that are there in the trenches with you. You need that support from one another, man. Because like I said, I had my moments in med school. Sure, I had my moments, my internship. I actually had I had a moment, particularly my first year, even fellowship.
Wow.
So, but kind of like you were saying is that, how do we get more of us to kind of get in these positions to where I am? And like I said, it starts early. One, you got to have people that look like me talking to these people. Because you didn't do it by yourself. I realized I didn't do it by myself, because that's the thing. And that's the problem with a lot of us, is that, okay, and I told you them stories I had with even a couple of black positions I worked with, man, they didn't care. Because, oh, well, you didn't go through what I went through, so therefore ain't anything. I'm like, we can't have that mentality. All right, we got to squash that, okay? That is a toxic mentality. I hate even word toxic, but that's a toxic mentality. So we got to, got to get rid of that. So first, people like me going back, helping those, right? Because now we got the blueprint. I don't want someone coming after me. It's like, I don't want you going through these same pitfalls.
See,
And so that's what it is. It's avoiding those pitfalls, man. I mean, granted, things have worked out, but man, things would have been a whole hell lot easier if I had some people earlier. It's like, hey, man, you should do this and not that. Well, consider this and not that, instead of going to the school of hard knocks and learning stuff. And so it's people like this, people like me early on, helping those people to the early preparation. Kind of like what you did for your daughters. It's kind of like, kind of what parents did for me. When I was like 8th, 9th grade, I went to a couple of summer programs at it was Johns Hopkins summer programs that actually had at Hood College in Frederick, Maryland. So like the preparation started early. Actually, man, my parents always had me do something every summer. So for the parents out there, like I said, I mean, I'm not a parent yet. Hopefully in the next year I will be. But what my parents did for me, for any of your viewers that are parents, man, you got to expose your kids just like you did, Kelly, for your girls, man. Just like my parents did for me, man. I was doing something every summer. I was not sitting at the house during summer, because your competition is not sitting at home. Your competition is always doing something. They're always going to a summer program or some summer enrichment program. I went to 2 summers, like 8th, 9th grade. I went to Johns Hopkins summer program, Hood College in Frederick, Maryland. Then I think trying to remember what I did in 10th grade. Then I think the summer after my sophomore year in high school, I went to a government school summer program over at in Lynchburg, Virginia.
Okay.
I did that. The summer after my junior year in high school, I went to National Student Leadership Conference. It was a 2-week program at University of Maryland. So see how you got to be doing something and then also during that stage, of course, I was also playing summer baseball. Which even if you do, and this other thing too, don't want to get too much off the rails, but I have to throw this in there because I want to share everything that has happened in my life to your viewers, because it's helped me out. Doing things outside of medicine, sports, volunteering, and particularly you need to be volunteering in medical settings. So I volunteered at this hospital in my town, and I was working in the radiology department. I was helping putting the images on CDs. Sounding old, right? We got CDs in, right? We got CDs. I was helping putting images on CDs for patients. I was doing patient transport. Those things matter, because then when those people on the mission committee look at your application, like, okay, where is he showing that, or where is she showing that he or she is interested in medicine, right? You're down in the trenches. So like when your daughter is doing the CNA thing, right? Hey, that's trenches, man. I mean, we're going to really see if you really want to be in healthcare. Yeah, you can be cleaning up drool, piss, and poop. Yeah. Mm-hmm. It's a great experience, to have that. And so, having those voluntary hours, because they're looking at a lot of that. I know people on all these admission committees, even the doc that's on the admission committee at ECU, he told me that this is what we're looking for this amount of hours, because that shows that you're interested.
Right.
So, and playing sports also helps, even if you don't make it professional. But I'm gonna tell you what, that helps you out big deal, because they know like, oh, this is a well-rounded person. So you're looking for people with well-rounded experiences, because then you can relate to your patients. Mm-hmm. And then so that, like I said, that kind of goes part in that preparation early. So I will say people looking like me, 1, helping them out. 2, the early preparation. All right. And then 3, man, like I said, I go back to getting your team together. Those are the 3 most important things.
Oh, man. You have dropped a lot of jewels tonight.
Appreciate it, man.
Oh, indeed. And I'm hoping that anybody who's listening and watching will understand that if we want to prepare our young people, the focus and conversation tonight is about gaining entry into the medical field. But everything that Dr. Wooten laid out for us tonight is transferable. It's the same thing that'll apply to gaining entry into to mental health space, gaining entry to the business world, because although there is a strategic plan, if you don't understand how to network and navigate, which is why all those decisions are on the golf course, then you won't really be able to take this theory that you get in college, because that's all it is theory. It's preparing you to be able to be at the intersection of theory and practicality, which is the execution. And the only way you execute is if you understand from an emotional intelligence standpoint what people need and how you can serve them, and serve them in a way that will allow them to appreciate their experience, because we all sell the same service, the same product, but it's the experience that will position you to have people coming back to you all the time.
Exactly, man. Yeah. So I tell people, I was like, hey, look, man, I am always, available if anybody needs some help along the way. Cause man, I'll tell you what, man, I wish I had a little bit of help early on, but luckily I have when I kind of started moving through. But I believe that's really what I'm here for. I believe a lot of the previous experiences I've been through now is preparing me for this, for now. So it's like, hey man, you ain't gotta go through all that. You know what I'm saying, man? You could avoid those pitfalls. I truly believe I have the blueprint. Like, hey, this is how you go about it. I know plenty of other people that got the blueprint. So that's what it really comes down to, man. And I will say something else too that I didn't mention, man. Where I, going back to the part where I said, it's like, man, it doesn't, matter who it is. A lot of times you might run into people who don't look like you, but they will take interest into you. And the reason is because there's a lot of these areas, man. A lot of these rural kind of underserved areas, even some kind of underserved, urban areas, but that where we make up a lot of the population that need people that look like us. And I'm gonna tell you what, these other races, man, they understand it. I work with, some, like some Indian people, white people, they understand it. They're like, one of my colleagues, she was just straight up telling me, she was like, I'm telling you, man, they really gonna like you down there in that area, man. And she was real with me. She straight up said, and because she was, we're kind of around the same age, and she, kind of understand. She understood that, and a lot of these other races do. Because I'm gonna tell you what, and particularly, and it made me think of something else, man. I remember my first year. So this one internship was my first year of residency, man. I worked with an Indian physician, man, and he told me, he was like, Matt, look here, when you done, man, go back and serve your own people, man. They deserve to see you and not this white woman over here, or even someone that look like him or whatever else. They deserve to have a doctor like you.
Well,
any man told me that.
and power is this. To your point, it's not about being racist. It's about creating hope. Because if they see you, then they can see themselves being able to accomplish the same thing. And to your point, it doesn't matter who is the person that invests in you. At the end of the day, it's about raising humanity and creating an opportunity for you to be able to do what it is that you love.
And I'll say this, man, can't be afraid to help each other, and you can't be afraid to have other people help you, man.
and don't worry about making mistakes, because a lot of time that's where the learning is at. When you think you failed, you may have not done as well as you intended to do. But the question is, did you learn something? And if you learn something from it, then you can correct it and you continue to elevate.
I found this somewhere. I don't know who specifically said it, or it might have been out for a while. It's like, man, look, we never take L's, man. It's just lessons learned.
That's it.
And you got to learn those lessons. And that's part of it. It's uncomfortable, but it's part of it. And if anybody who tells you, and this is where, and I have to share this too, because my first year in fellowship, man, the program that it was a new program there. There were several previous infectious disease fellows that went on to do critical care, but I was the first one when this program got combined. So there was already a lot of pressure. And, when I started working with some of the critical care people, I think, few of the faculty had, some not really positive opinions about infectious disease people. So I kind of dealt with that. And, there was a little bit, I think from a few people might have been a little bit of a racial component too, but then later on I figured it really wasn't. And actually, once we kind of made some amends on certain things, actually experiences with some of those same people actually ended up working out. But what I will say is that this is where I took the pressure off me when I talked about, having that pressure to feel like you gotta know everything. And you can't make a mistake and all the other stuff, right? Are you all right, man?
Yeah, I might need a doctor.
But what I'm saying is that, where I realized I took that pressure off myself is two things. One, some of the physicians I work with thought that, which was kind of a turnoff. They're like, well, sometimes Matt thinks he knows this, but he really doesn't.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, me, I never guess. I'm gonna provide my best guess if I don't know anything. But I'm not just gonna make up something. But we kind of took that as like, oh man, like Matt here trying to make up some stuff, whatever. And then once, and I straight up and told him, and it's probably another thing that we can't be afraid to do, man. We really, I think, as Black people, got to really stop walking on eggshells, because nobody else does that. We gotta stop walking on eggshells. We gotta, and like I said, we've underwent a lot of emotional trauma, but you know what? We're about solutions. I'm want to free myself from all that, man. I'm like, no. I'm not walking on eggshells anymore. I'm not walking on thin ice. I'm gonna hold my head up, my chest high, my head high, chest up, man. I'm gonna go forward with it, man. And people will respect that, and then they know how to deal with you. So, man, once I had to tell some of the attendants I was working with, like, man, look, I've been programmed this way.
Mm-hmm.
And then when I had that conversation with them, man, they were just like, oh wow, we didn't know that. Okay, I'm gonna tell you what, don't be afraid you don't know something. And then what I learned is that all my other colleagues, which all different races actually, and they, I realized with them, it's like, man, yeah, there's a lot of stuff they don't know.
Exactly.
And then so when I took that pressure off myself, I no longer have that anymore. And I think it allowed me to be so much better. And so that's why I want a lot of our people to understand. It's like, man, stop acting like walking eggshells. Stop acting like you walk on thin ice. And it's okay to make mistakes and, and screw up sometimes. It's okay. If someone
and not to know something.
Right. And don't let people fool you to think that, man, they got there perfectly. And it never works out that way, man. No one just went unscathed to the promised land, to the top of the mountain, and then undergo or endure some bumps in the road. All right. It just, or some tough weather, man. It doesn't work that way. So then once I was able to release that pressure, I was able to soar, man. Shoot.
But that's that whole thing that I was talking about earlier about the emotional intelligence. Once you know who you are,
right,
and you're comfortable in your own space, whether you make a mistake, you don't know something, you're scared to ask a question, but you're no longer scared because you're confident in who you are.
Right.
The only thing you can do is you can learn something new. Some people act like, oh, I can't believe he asked this question, but he ain't know the same thing. He just wasn't brave enough to ask the question.
And I will say this, even as a physician, and like I said, we don't know the answer, particularly with this kind of what's going on right now. You better, shoot, I don't have, and because I'm gonna tell you what, if it's a doctor that comes off and act like they know everything, you don't need to be seeing them. See, I'll try to tell people, I believe most of the time I have the answers, but if I don't, I'm just like, hey, look, I don't know the answer to that, but here, let me go look that up.
But I respect that,
and I can go and because then people will appreciate you more because they won't be like, man, doc didn't try to BS me. He said, it's okay, but I'm like, hey, I'll go. Let me go look that up. Let me go read up on that. Okay. And it's okay. People will respect you more. And it's not just in medicine, but it's just all fields. People will respect that. And that's the thing because they see authenticity.
Hey, look, I'm gonna tell you something. So I mess with some of your colleagues sometimes. I ask them who was the father of medicine. And so when they come back with that answer they come back with,
right,
I ask them a question about Imhotep. And
and hey, man, and look, I would say with me, it depends on, of course, who you read. Now, I will say this, now the history medicine, I know some generalizations, kind of how we got to where we are, which could probably be for another show, but certain things I know, certain things I don't, but I don't have it. But but I'm gonna tell you what, that was my first year in fellowship. That was about 3 years. Yeah, that was early, like summer 2018. Kind of, that was about 3 years ago.
Okay.
And that allowed me to grow because first time I was able to just release that pressure. And then I was actually, I mean, I believe I performed pretty well at my job, but I was able to perform even better. And that's kind of what we need to have. I think a lot of us are handcuffed by that pressure.
Yep.
Yeah. And so a lot of people are like, I mean, and I think another thing that we have to purge out of our community is fear. I don't really say it's really fear of failure. I mean, sometimes I think it's kind of fear of success.
And I think that's more the case.
Yeah.
But if you don't fail, right? How do you ever, you're never going to accomplish anything if you don't fail, because failure is a part of the learning process,
right,
that helps you perfect whatever.
Right. And so, yeah. And like I said, I think it's and the reason why I threw that fear of success in there is because of that pressure. Yep. and so, you know, so, I mean, of course, there's definitely fear of failure in there, which I think goes without saying, but that's why I kind of bring up the fear of success, because it's just like, I think particularly with a lot of us, it's just like, oh man, well, yeah, you have a lot. I mean, we have a lot of untapped potential, man.
Yeah.
But you need someone to kind of to invest in those people and to give them the confidence, because they might say like, okay, well, I know I can do this and this. Well, okay, you did this. Now it's time to move up next level. Oh man, I don't know if I could do that.
I can't keep doing this. I'm gonna have to learn that.
Yeah.
I'm uncomfortable if I'm gonna be able to, because fear of success is one of the largest challenges that people face. And when organizations get taken over, right?
Yeah.
You got so many people, you got new people coming in. I don't know who they are, what their skill set is. And so if I get this next position, am I going to be able to compete with them? Not realizing realistically, our only competition is with ourselves.
Right.
As long as Dr. Wooten is being the best version of himself, he can't take any more out of himself. And those are things that we got to preach and teach.
Yeah. And it sounds simple, but I'm gonna tell you what, man, I tell a lot of this stuff I did not learn until 3 years ago. Okay. Like I did not learn this stuff until 3 years ago, man. And in terms of, yes, I'm always competing with myself, but just because I'm a naturally competitive person, right? And that's where that pressure of, yes, they're not really too many that look like us, right? So, you know, the thing is, well, I feel like we're carrying that weight on our back, where it's like, man, heck, if I mess up here, I might mess it up for people behind me or whoever else. And it's like, you know what, man, in order for you to move forward, man, you have to focus on yourself and not worry about, I mean, yes, you were competing. Yes, you're competing against others, but you can't let the competition of others overshadow, you know, competition yourself. And you got to work, and because that's the only thing you control. You can't control other people. But if you're doing everything that you need to be doing, right? If you're doing everything that you need to be doing, I believe more times than not, you will be successful.
And that's my thought, because even when, if it's a race or a competition, if you lose, it wasn't really that the other person was better than you. It could have been that they trained harder than you, that they applied different techniques that you didn't apply, that they wasn't afraid. So when you look at the race and you see somebody keep looking behind their back, if that person passed them, if you hadn't taken a second to look back and stay focused on running your race, you probably would have won. Yeah, man. So man, you killed them tonight.
Appreciate it, man. Man, thanks for having me on here. Like I said, I can say, man, this is like my first podcast, man. Yeah, I know several other people got podcasts, but I do the schedules and stuff. I haven't been on it yet. But I'm gonna tell you what, I love this, man. Thanks for having me on, man. And like I said, man, we've gotten to know each other over the past couple of years with you, good bro. And you know, and like I said, we talk about, you know, emotional wellness and making sure your mind is clear. So you can go out in the world and be the best version of yourself. You know, I mean, this is what it comes down to. So, and I'm glad, man, because I know you're doing the work, man. You're, you know, your organizations, man, and I'm just honored that you asked me to be on your platform, and you know, as your viewership, you know, grows. And like man said, I the video that you sent me of Dr. Was it Kamini?
Oh, Kava.
Yeah.
Kamani, yep.
Yeah, and I've heard him before, and I still got to get through the full thing. But I was listening to that, and I was like, man, okay, you got your own YouTube page. I'm like, hey, man, this is where it starts. So, man, hey, viewers, man, subscribe to the page, man. I subscribe, like the video, you know, because that's where it starts. And this is, you know, so what you're doing here, man, and you know, the fact that you had him on.
Oh yeah,
and then I get to be on. I'm like, oh man, like, oh shoot. I guess I'm kind of a little something. Yeah, I guess I'm somewhat of a big deal, you know. So yeah, man, this is where it starts. So man, hopefully, man, this is just the first of many, man. So like I said, thanks for having me on. I look forward to the next time I'm on here, man, because man, we got a lot of stuff. There's more stuff I'm sure your viewers want to hear about. So
oh yeah, we definitely gonna have to set that up. And I'll say this before we land the plane. So, and this is the second podcast. It was another one called The Infinite Voice of Our Youth that I had for 2 years.
Wow.
I mean, we was in Belize, we was in so many different places in terms of viewership. And I slowed it down because, you know, the only thing that's constant is change. And so I had to shift because that was just tied to young people. And I know that in order for us to position people to realize the best of themselves, it requires a balance of adults and young people,
absolutely,
men and women. And so diversity, all those different things is what's going to allow us to give them the best opportunity to not only survive, but be able to thrive at optimal capacity. So, and the medical profession is an important part of this process because it's mind, body, and soul for us to be able to embrace our truth. So
absolutely.
Shout out to Dr. Matt Wooten
tonight.
Freeway to elevation.
Yes.
Let me lock this.